contract itself is a pilot contract for an important section of highway that is intended to then be as a model and applied to all of the national roads in Papua New Guinea. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see the amount of work or the amount of time that it has taken so far. The preparation took 12 months. The bidding and evaluation took 6 months. So that's basically 18 months from start to be able to award the contract. And the implementation of the contract will be 44 months. Originally, we had hoped for 60 months, but there were many, many delays in getting started, and until I arrived, actually. And so the period of the project is actually determined by the loan ending date. So unfortunately, we're reduced to 44 months, but that is not going to change the principles and the activities in the contract. So the Hiratana Highway is about 375 kilometers in length. It runs along the Gulf of Papua. The OPRC section is 112 kilometers. Just to clarify, OPRC is Output and Performance-Based Road Contract. That was the name that has been used in the past, but World Bank now and ADB they have changed the terminology, and now we're using performance-based maintenance contract. But we're having to stick with OPRC because of the contract. The road runs through different terrains, plain area, hilly areas, and along the road, the chief activities are there is growing betel nut and rubber plantations. And the road gives access from the capital, Port Moresby, up to a future LNG, or rather a future development of the gas fields along the Gulf of Papua. And what's interesting is that the road passes through different tribal areas, and Papua New Guinea is renowned for the variety and the number of different languages that are spoken, totally different languages. And along our 112 kilometers of road, 5 different languages are spoken. And the only way one group can speak to another group is through Pidgin English. You can see on the map, we have divided the road into 7 sections. And here's a little bit, or some more details of the 7 sections. We've sectioned them based on their construction history. And if you look, you don't need to go through the table in detail, but basically the road was upgraded over about a 20-year period, progressively moving from east to west. And so the conditions along the road are, in each section, are different than another section. So you could, even though it's a contiguous length of 112 kilometers, you can actually consider it as 7 different roads that are just joined up. And you can see in the last column the condition of the highway when we did all of our inspections and scoping. So just a few photographs of the sections of the highway where there was recently completed construction in the last 2 years. The roads are in very good condition, or those sections are. Then the oldest section of the highway is in bad condition. It's partly destroyed, and part of it is going to need total reconstruction. Part of it is going to need a mill and overlay. Again, pavements and shoulders along the highway, the conditions varied from being reasonable to many, many flaws and defects along the highway. And Unfortunately, the local residents have a habit, when they want you to slow down going through their little market area, they simply cut a couple of trenches in the pavement, across the pavement, to force you to slow down. Or they put in their own hand-built speed humps. So there's a lot of interference from the locals to, in interfering with the condition of the pavement. But we think we have a solution to that. I'll come to that later on. Culverts, many culverts, because all of the rains in the Central Range have to pass under the highway before draining into the Gulf of Papua. Most culverts are in good condition, but many culverts require, you can see in the pictures here, there's no guardrails or guideposts to indicate the location of these culverts, and you can see how the shoulder just disappears in the bottom right-hand photograph. So there are lots of, if you will, safety problems related with these culverts. It's a design flaw. We have 7 bridges. Generally, the bridges are in very good condition, but what happens is the embankments or the abutments, the protection of the abutments using gabion baskets tend to get washed away or eroded by the very strong, very high level of flooding that continually occurs. Villages and markets, depending on where we are along the road, some markets are very well maintained. Other markets, particularly where they transfer the beetle nuts at night, are very badly maintained with trenches in the pavement. So I suppose the condition of the highway can be summarized but in this graph, in which we show the length of the highway along with the roughness measurements on a per kilometer basis. And there's quite a clear trend. Starting at the left-hand side is the oldest section of the highway. And as we proceed along, the roughness reduces, and the newest section of highway has the lowest IRI reading, except for one spike, which is a bridge under construction. So what we need to do during the course of the contract is, of course, bring down the roughness in the first section and make sure that the roughness on the other sections is not going to increase to any significant degree. I haven't shown a traffic slide, but the traffic on the highway is roughly 1,000 vehicles a day. There's a few trucks, but it's mostly passenger vehicles or trucks that are carrying passengers. And most of the freight carrying trucks are articulated vehicles. So there's less concern about heavy axle loading because they're carrying containers where there's a less likelihood of having very heavy overloads. Now, this is perhaps the most important slide, because it's going to demonstrate the approach, the strategy, the kind of solution. Given this top band, you have a road in 7 sections, 112 kilometers in length. But you can see we have color-coded the condition of the road. So in the first section, there's 4 kilometers of road in red that needs to be totally reconstructed. Then there are 2 sections of road marked yellow that are in like fair to poor condition, and they will require periodic maintenance very quickly. Then there are 3 sections in pale green that we expect will require periodic maintenance during the 4-year period of the contract. And finally, there are 2 new sections in the brighter green on the left-hand side where we don't expect there to be any resealing required during the contract. So how do we go about tackling these road sections? You could also think of them as independent roads, a network. It's just they happen to be lined up. The first thing is we looked at the initial works of Section 1. It's divided into 1.1 and 1.2. It's 10 kilometers in length. And what is required there is the destroyed section, if you will, of 4 kilometers, needs to be totally reconstructed. And the balance, 6 kilometers, needs to be rehabilitated through a removal of the crust and additional base course material and then a reseal. Then what happens? Well, that first section would then go on to routine maintenance. Let me back up. The initial works on that first section would be completed within 12 months. Then that section would go on to routine maintenance for months 13 to 44. It wouldn't receive any periodic maintenance because it's been totally reconstructed or rehabilitated, but it is going to receive, if you will, management services throughout the entire period of the contract, meaning patrolling, implementation of safeguards, traffic management, and so forth. So that is how the first 10 kilometers are going to be handled by the contract. Now let's look at the remaining sections. Initial works for the remaining sections will be done in months, completed in months 1 to 5. We're giving a little bit longer time, months 1 to 8, to complete any repairs to the bridges and the culverts. And then we would also carry out safety improvements on this section, but only after all of the initial repairs have been done. Then we'll see exactly what is required in terms of further safety improvements. And we would carry that out between months 13 and 18. Routine maintenance on this section, then, would start as soon as they complete the initial repairs, tentatively between months 6 and 44. However, I think as mentioned earlier, if the contractor completes his initial repairs on any 5 kilometer section before the 6 months, he can then immediately go into maintenance services and be paid his monthly maintenance services payment for those 5 kilometers. So there's an incentive for him to complete the initial repairs as fast as possible. If I were a contractor, I'd immediately go to section 6 and 7, get the grass cleaned, get the grass cut, get the culverts cleaned up, bang, and then go to the employer and say, right, I'm finished that. It's only 1 month now. I would like to start maintenance services, which he's perfectly entitled to do. Now there's this other component, periodic maintenance. Now this is where it is a hybrid contract. It is not a purely performance-based contract. Because, as you saw earlier, and you can see on the ribbon at the top, the pavement conditions vary all the way along the road. So we are including a periodic maintenance component with its own separate bill of quantities for resealing or overlay as needed, and between months 13 and 44. Now we know that section 3, 6.5 kilometers, definitely requires periodic maintenance. So we have scheduled that for year 2. But a periodic maintenance or overseeing on the remaining sections would be decided at the end of each year and programmed for the following year. And it would be proposed by the contractors, the one contractor, and discussed and agreed with by the employer. Because we cannot predict exactly how the pavements are going to deteriorate over the next 4 years. So there needs to be this flexibility. And of course, at the bottom, all of the road is covered by management services. Just a schedule showing how all of this is going to happen over the 4-year period. Skip that. Now let's look at the actual bid document itself. And it is based upon the World Bank OPRC standard bid document that was published or revised in 2009. Now, as it turns out, the World Bank has further revised this document in January of this year, 2017. And it's now called the Performance-Based Maintenance Contract Standard Bid Document. And there are some minor changes between the OPRC and the 2017 document, but they don't change the intent at all. And just for the information of KP, the performance-based maintenance contract that ADB is preparing will be using the World Bank 2017 version. So you'll have the benefit of the latest version. So if we look at what's in this document, I think many of you will immediately recognize the sections of the bid document. 1 through 6. Number 7 is the specifications, and then the conditions of contract. What? Okay, you've got this document now. You've downloaded it from the internet. It's 250 pages long. What do you do with it? How do you make this work for your road? Let's have a look. First of all, you're going to have to modify the evaluation and qualification criteria, because it may be a big contract. Actually, our contract is $80 million engineer's estimate. So you are looking for a contractor, with quite considerable financial capacity, work experience, and very importantly, personnel who have some road maintenance experience. They may not have performance-based maintenance experience, but they're not just road construction engineers. They've got somebody in the team has to have good road maintenance experience. The bidding forms, we have to create a bill of quantities that will reflect those works that I showed you in the previous slide with the colored band. And we have to specify or require method statements from the bidders that will basically provide a description how he will carry out each one of those different activities. Now we come to the specifications themselves. And this is where you have to do a little more writing than you might otherwise. Because, first of all, we have to describe the works that are required. There's some rehabilitation works, there's some improvement works, there's maintenance works, and there are, for example, the activities of the self-control unit, and so forth. We have to specify the service levels that are required in the contract that the contractor has to achieve. Also, emergency services. We have to clearly define what is a maintenance activity and what is an emergency activity that would be paid extra. We have to show how pavement reductions may be made contractor is unable to meet his service levels. And then we have to identify all the technical documents. I'll come to that. It's very important. The technical documents that will apply to all of his works. And now we move down to the last box. We've got the general conditions, particular conditions, etc. Particular conditions, we have to specify or describe the payments, how payments are going to be made, and any if you will, criteria or conditions that would allow the employer to terminate the contractor. Because we've heard experiences where contractors fail to perform. Very difficult to sometimes to terminate the contract. Well, we think we have some conditions clearly described that would allow the employer to terminate the contractor if it became necessary. Now let's look at the bill of quantities. And when you think about it, this is where the first thing the bidders are going to look at. They're not going to read through all your words and everything. They're going to go immediately to the bill of quantities and see what works they have to do, what rates they have to quote. And where is, looking at it cynically, how they can, if you will, exploit this contract to their benefit. So the bill of quantities is very, very important. So, first item is bill number 1, general. And it covers mobilization insurances and the preparation of a series of safeguard and quality assurance plans that the contractor has to submit in the first month of the contract. And he will be paid a lump sum for each one of these plans that he submits. We mentioned safeguards because the project is funded by the World Bank. We have to comply with all of the World Bank's safeguard requirements. And we thought it turned out the best solution was to require the contractor or the bidders to submit their plans for complying with all of the bank's safeguard requirements. Number 2 is the non-performance part of the contract, the initial repairs of 102 kilometers. So that's excluding that 10 kilometers. That's the rest of the highway, where there will be repairs to the pavement, to the drainage, to furniture, vegetation clearing, etc., etc., etc. All of those works will be paid on a remeasurement of quantities. And the reason is, number 1, it's a pilot. Number 2, there are lots and lots of defects in the existing highway. It's very likely that in a future contract like this, we might ask for a lump sum to complete all of the initial repairs. But because it's a pilot, because there are many, many defects in the road, and we wanted to attract good contractors, and allay as much risk as practical, we have made the initial repairs a paid item based on remeasurement of quantities. It's not perfect, but we've got to make this work. Number 3, reconstruction of the first 10 kilometers. Here we have made it basically a survey, design, build, and maintain a particular level of roughness for involving reconstruction over 4 kilometers and overlay over 6 kilometers. And that is going to be paid on a lump sum. So this is if you will, the pure performance-based maintenance part of the contract. And we're very pleased to included because it gives us a chance to try out this kind of pure maintenance part or performance part. The fourth bill is the maintenance services over the entire 112 kilometers. It covers the routine maintenance activities in the field and what we call management services, the self-control unit and its implementation of all of the safeguard plans. And he would be paid a single rate per kilometer per month. Number 5 are the improvements. These include sealing more shoulders, constructing footpaths, additional signage, additional pavement markings for for crosswalks, and probably additional guardrails. And we don't know the quantities yet until we get the initial repairs completed. So this is going to be paid on remeasurement of the quantities. Resealing, we are estimating 50 kilometers of resealing will be required during the 4 years. We have specified 5 sealing options, and we have provided a schedule of rates, or rather we have the bidding document has an all-inclusive rate for each type of sealing option. And with a simple measurement of per square meters as fully restored, including pavement markings, speed bumps, and so forth. And 6, there's the usual emergency services and day works and contingencies, and we are providing a schedule of rates and provisional sums. So this gives the employer something in his back pocket to get works done that are not covered under the other 6 bills. So payments. How are payments going to be made? Okay, number 1, the contract provides an advance of 10%. The initial payments, there's a bit of repetition here. They will be paid on measured quantities and the unit rates in the contract. Reconstruction of that 10 kilometers, that is a lump sum that will be paid as a percentage of progress as agreed between the employer and the contractor. Resealing will be measured quantities based on exclusive unit rates, as I mentioned. Improvement works, measured quantities and unit rates. Maintenance services, I think we're going to use the basic procedure of a unit rate per kilometer per month. And payments can start as soon as the contractor has completed any 5 kilometer section. And there will be reductions from this maintenance service payment for non-compliance with the service levels. I'll give you some examples in a few slides. Retentions, 5% retention, 2.5% repaid on completion of the initial repairs and rehabilitation works, and 2.5% after 12 months on all works, but there's no retention on maintenance services. Why should this? Delay damages, 0.05% today on all works except maintenance services. So, Reconstruction Section 1. Now this is, again, a special case. So, what is required here? Section 1 is 10 kilometers. It also applies to any, I have to digress here for a moment. Remind me, when I go through the slide, I'll come back and explain. He will get a lump sum payment for the survey, the design, and the construction of this, or reconstruction of this Section 1, 10 kilometers. But it's performance-based in the sense that he has to meet a roughness criterion. Number 1, it's measured at the completion of construction and then annually. And at completion of construction, he has to achieve an IRI under 2.3. And he has to maintain it at under 3 for the balance of the contract. If he cannot maintain it, he has to carry out remedial actions as required, or he will face a payment reduction. This same model also applies to any section along the highway where there's an overlay done in the later years. If it's a straight reseal, the contractor cannot be responsible for roughness. But if the road section has deteriorated to an extent where he has to take up the seal, apply new base course, compact, and then put down a new seal, then we're saying you have to do that and comply with these roughness standards. Now in section 1, it's also a little bit complicated because in addition to reconstruction of the pavement, he's also got to put in replace the road furniture, etc., etc. So those items he'll be paid on a measured quantities basis. And then as soon as he has finished section 1, he can finish it in 5 kilometer sections because that applies. Well, it's only 10 kilometers. He will then maintain that 10 kilometer section and be paid for his maintenance services. Method statements. The bidders are to provide method statements for the initial repairs, reconstruction, resealing, maintenance services, and operation of the self-control unit operations. This is a very important part of the bid because you as the employer, we as the employer, had to be absolutely assured these bidders understood what performance, what was required in the contract. And as giving, during the bid evaluation, we actually disqualified 3 bids because their method statements were insufficient. And it was clear they did not understand what was required. So these method statements are very important. Now there's another set of, the bidders also have to submit method statements for the environmental management plan, social and gender awareness plan, health and safety management plan, HRPAs, emergency procedures, and traffic management plan. Most of these are more or less, they've been applied many times in many contracts, except number 10, emergency procedures. Usually that's a responsibility of the traffic police or the highway agency. In this case, he's taking over the highway, so he has to have an emergency procedures plan. So if there's a road crash or a bad flood or something, really serious happens along the road, he has got to be able to. He's the first responder before even after the King the police show up after a couple of days. He is the first responder, so that's a responsibility that he's taking over. So it's essential that bidders demonstrate their understanding of the bid requirement, the OPRC requirements. And as in the Hiratano OPRC bid evaluation, many bidders failed to understand their responsibilities. That was a reason for their disqualification. So we're recommending that bid documents provide strong guidance to the bidders so that it clearly defines what you want to see in their bids. Specifications. They're divided into 4 parts: general specifications, And that's subdivided into work requirements and maintenance requirements. Let me explain. The work requirements basically describe the input-based part of the contract. What's required in initial repairs, reconstruction, periodic maintenance, and safety improvements. And maintenance requirements address the performance-based part of the contract. The requirements for the self-control unit, for the inspections that are to be carried out, for the levels of service, which we'll see in a moment, for the management services that he has to provide, the reporting, and the payments he will receive and any reductions that may be made from payments for non-compliance with the service levels. We don't have the preview screen. Hold on. Okay. Part B, that's the second box down, refers to the, if you will, the standard specifications. I'll just go on. And here are the specifications and manuals in PNG that apply in the contract. Number one is an updated June 2015 specification for construction of roads and bridge works. Number two is a draft specification for road maintenance activities that was prepared by AusAid for Papua New Guinea. In actual fact, when you dig into the spec, you see that it's a lot of it is extracted from Australian maintenance activities. A very important manual is this next one, pavement condition surveys. Sounds pretty simple, but the importance of this manual is that it has a clear definition of all the defects in the pavement. And those definitions apply in the contract. So if the employer measures a defect, he does it according to this survey. And the contractor, if he disagrees with the defect, they have, this guide provides a clear indication of what is a defect and what is not a defect. Now, the approach we took was we set the levels of service for defects from this manual, such that it was bad, poor, fair, and good. Every defect had 4 levels. And what we set then, if you will, this level of service at the boundary between poor and fair. So when you think about it, the road actually could deteriorate to a point where it was just above in the fair rating, just above poor, and it would still pass. And it's all done, it's quantified in this pavement condition survey manual. So very important. And then there's a traffic control manual that is actually much more important than you think. I mean, how many times have you gone on roads, speeding along, and come around a corner or something, and there's a maintenance crew? Well, in PNG, high speeds are a rule rather than the exception, so we put great emphasis on the road maintenance crews having proper traffic control. Now, performance indicators need to be measurable. I've said that many times. So we have 8 groups of performance indicators. Road usability, keep the road open to traffic. Carriageway and shoulders, pavement, shoulder defects, hazards. These are the two key, if you will, performance indicators. With each performance indicator, there are sub-indicators. Road safety furniture, guardrails and signs and markings. Drainage, culverts and side drains. Bridges and riverbanks, decks, parapets, riverbed abutments. Slopes and vegetation, erosion on both back slopes and side slopes, vegetation clearance. Big issue in a tropical country like Papua New Guinea is not so like Pakistan, at least at this part. Vegetation grows like crazy. Has to be kept under control. Road durability. The roughness has to be within the specified limits. And management services, the self-control unit, environmental management plan, the quality assurance plan, traffic management, etc., all have to be the provisions in those plans have to be adhered to. This is language up with which I will not put yes. Service levels. Okay. We've talked a lot about service levels, and one of the things that may or may not have been mentioned directly is that the service levels should be appropriate or to the level of traffic, so that a service level for a motorway carrying 20,000 vehicles a day will be much, much higher than the service level you set for a highway, two-lane highway, carrying 1,000 or 2,000 vehicles a day. They cannot be the same. Otherwise, it's either too low for the motorway or it's way, way too high for the two-lane road. So you have to use a judgment. Ideally, you should run through an economic analysis and try to determine what are the appropriate service levels for the traffic conditions on your road. Because the Hiratana Highway carries approximately 1,000 vehicles a day, we've set the service levels at what I would call a modest level. So, for gosh sakes, the guy does not have to fix a pothole within 24 hours. You might accept that or demand that for the M1, but you're not going to require that from a contractor managing the Hiratana Highway. So that, in a nutshell, is the approach we took. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. Okay? Because there are several tables of service levels in the bid document. Extremely boring. Let's just go through one or two. Road usability. He's got to keep the road open. If he doesn't keep the road open, he's going to lose 5% of his monthly payment per day. Pothole, aerial potholes, we love potholes, size and number. I think as Ian mentioned, we're going to use if you will, a density approach. He is allowed so many little potholes per kilometer. If it exceeds that number, there's a penalty. He will have a payment deduction. There is a however elsewhere, it's not shown in the table. If there is a large pothole, it's got to be fixed within 5 days because it represents a hazard. But otherwise, we will tolerate a certain level of small potholes under 300 millimeters diameter per kilometer during the monthly inspections. Road signs, again, we have made reference to some specifications on what is required in terms of visibility from road signs, and there's a penalty if he, and I mustn't use that word, if he fails to achieve the requirement, there's a payment reduction of 10% of that kilometer's monthly payment. Road durability, we mentioned earlier, he has got to achieve the roughness at all times, or at least at the time of inspection, and the annual inspection. And if he fails to meet that, he'll lose 50% of the kilometer per month. And the self-control unit, there's a whole series of activities that the self-control unit has to carry out, and the payment reduction will be 5% if he's found in non-compliance, 5% for the entire length of the road for that month. Response times. The contractor must deliver his service levels at all times. And the defects, what we're basically saying is, with a couple of exceptions that we'll show in a minute, there's no response time allowed. At the end of the month, there will be a formal inspection carried out by the project manager or the employer, and any defect at that time will be subject to a reduction in payments. He's not given another 30 days to fix that defect. That's the weakness of giving response times. The contractor will just sit back and wait till he's found out, and then he gets 30 days to fix it. We're saying, no. Whatever we find at the end of the month, the payment will be, reductions will be made to the payment for that item. But there are exceptions. You just can't have it all one way or the other. And there's a table showing some of the only response times that we are allowing. For example, we don't care what the road's like, the self-control unit has to patrol that unit once a week. If the project manager goes out on the road and he finds a defect, he must inform the contractor within 24 hours. Road usability, the road cannot be closed for more than 8 hours. Exceptional weather, which is a problem with the cyclone from Papua New Guinea. We were giving 21 days from an exceptional weather event to repair any damage that's done. We have to look out for lots of road crashes along our highway. It's high-speed roads. Time allowed to remove the vehicles from the shoulders. I mean, the contractor, someone will have to remove the vehicle off the carriageway, and it sits on the shoulder as a safety hazard. He's got 2 days to remove it from the shoulder. And after a road crash, he has 21 days to repair any effects of the road crash. Replacement of guardrail or a handrail on a bridge. And he's got 5 days to repair any potholes that are greater than 300 millimeters diameter. He has a monthly report to prepare. It looks maybe a little intimidating. It's not. We'll use standard forms, and you should be able to complete his report very quickly each month. I'm not going to go through each one of these items. Okay, the next slide is part of his monthly statement, and it shows for each performance indicator, it shows the percent reduction for non-compliance. Now, there are 24 items, which I know is much more than New Zealand, but we have to start somewhere. Every time we try to cut something, it got in the way. So we thought, look, let's go with these 24 potential defects as a start. In the next round of contracting, we may find that we could reduce these quite considerably. But we're dealing with a totally new situation in PNG, so it was best to be safe than sorry. Now, what the table shows is basically records the length of highway in each category that is non-compliant. And then there's a percent payment reduction. And the way we do it is we convert the percent payment reduction into kilometers. So in this table, you can see the bottom, he's had several defects or payment reductions, and the total adding up to 15.7 kilometers. Now, at full operation, he's paid for 112 kilometers. So he's going to lose payment for 15.7 kilometers because of these non-compliances. There's also an additional monthly statement for compliance with each one of his management plans. His environmental management plan, his traffic management plan, his self-control unit, and so forth. The same thing applies. We allowed 5% of the total. So, for example, if he were clearly defective in applying the traffic management plan, you can see a little circle up there, he would lose 5% or 5.6 kilometers. And then when we add them up, that is in the center table, he would lose a total of 21.3 kilometers, and we would only pay him for 90 kilometers. Now, if I'm the contractor's general manager back in head office, I would be asking, my road manager, hey, how come you were not paid for, more than 20% of the road this month? The final part along the bottom shows how, if the contractor fails to, or if the reductions exceed 50% in 3 months, he will, that's a grounds for terminating the contract. So I'm going to keep going. Time is ebbing away. Hang on. Just got a couple more slides. Additional features. Very quickly, we're providing kilometer markers because they aren't there now. There's going to be a road safety inspection done at the end of year 1 to determine what improvements would be required. The contractor is going to be asked to collect asset data for the Department of Works Road Asset Management System. He's free to propose new materials and methods anytime, and he can and will and must subcontract the labor-based works to the local community groups along the highway. Otherwise, they're going to just dig more trenches in this brand new pavement. And there's another point not contained on this slide, but in the document, that because it's a pilot, there is a clause in the contract document that allows for a review of all of the contract conditions after 12 months, involving the employer, the contractor, and an independent party. So if anybody, they can bring their grievances to this meeting, and there is a provision there that if both sides agree, they can make a change to the contract, to correct some, something crazy that we have to consider. The community groups along the highway will definitely be involved. Bid evaluation, very quickly. Our engineer's estimate was $18 million. We received 8 bids. Terrific. There was real interest. 2 international contractors, and the rest were Papua New Guinea contractors or contractors that joint ventures between Aussie companies and PNG companies. 3 bids were below the engineer's estimate, and 5 were above the estimate, but the 3 below the estimate were disqualified on the basis of their financial capacity, their experience, and their personnel, and the limitations, actually litigation history, and really failure to provide an adequate method statement. Here they are. And now the issues. What happened? What we found was that there were excessive prices for those general lump sum items. And contractors are rascals, they were front-loading it. There were very high prices quoted for maintenance services. And there was really a large variance in the prices quoted for that design build section on section 1. Now, on the technical side, many of the method statements just showed that the writers did not understand what was being required of them. In the end, just last month, the contract was awarded to the 4th lowest bidder with a contract price 10% higher than the engineer's estimate. I'm going to skip over risk factors. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip over risk factors because actually they've been covered several times.
But just at least just show them.
Oh, okay. Physical factors. It's like Nepal. PNG has a high risk physical environment. Relations with the communities along the highway. They say PNG is where the wild things are. They're not referring to the wildlife. So you have to have good relations with the communities. Traffic. We just don't know about the traffic because we don't know about these gas field developments. And again, all the nuts and bolts of the levels of service and so forth. There's a risk. There are risks in there that we'll only learn about as the project proceeds. So, lessons learned so far, and for my next PEMC, which hopefully will benefit KP. And that is, number 1, provide sufficient time for budget for scoping of the works. It took us 12 months to do 112 kilometers. Be conservative in estimating costs, because we're dealing with unknowns in many instances. Conduct several workshops for interested bidders and employees. Get people on side, get people educated, get people supported. Require bidders to attend the pre-bid site visit and meetings. Set exacting qualification criteria for the bidders in terms of their financial, their contract experience, and their personnel. Require detailed method statements in the bids. And you should provide outlines. Each method statement say, look, you need to cover this point. Assess the method statements to disqualify unresponsive bidders. Fading here. Provide lump sum amounts in the BOQ for the management plans to prevent front loading. The amounts are small, so maybe put in an amount rather than asking them to fill in an amount, and then you get a nasty surprise. Ensure that there's a sufficient percent of the bid price is for the maintenance and management services. And there's different ways to do this. Provide clearly defined criteria for contract termination, which I think we've done in PNG. Incorporate national specifications, manuals, and guidance documents that are familiar to both the contractors and the employers. Tenku tumas, they say in Pidgin.
Good. Somebody have a question for this presentation? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't have a question but a comment. See, this contract that has been designed is not the first one in PNG. There was an earlier attempt, to do a performance-based contract in PNG with ADB assistance, and that failed to achieve its results. And not just that, but that in that contract there was clear collusion between the contractors and the supervision consultants. There was hardly any inspection, and these monthly payments were made, on a pretty regular basis with very little accountability. So, with that as a background, see, this new contract was prepared, taking into account the lessons learned from the previous experience. Thank you.
That's correct, and we're very fortunate that the several well-qualified, large Papua New Guinea Australian contractors bid on the project, and it's been awarded to one of those companies, and it will be an international consultant for supervising, sort of monitoring the works and administering the contract for the employer.
Any other question?
Yes. Hello. Yes. One more question, please. You have told on the slide there were 8 bidders, okay, and 3 were irresponsive and 5 were successful, okay, and out of those 5, 1 was 10% above, okay, on the engineer's estimate. My question is that why those 3 bidders which were irresponsible were issued documents before bid? Why those were issued documents? They should have been issued the bidding documents if they were financially having less capacity. 3 bidders, the 3 irresponsible bidders, you have issued the tenders to them also to participate in the bid. Why those were issued the you haven't seen the concerned person haven't seen their documents first before issued the bidding documents. The firm, the bidding capacity of the firm. Why those were 3 tenders were irresponsible? Not responsible, sorry.
Okay, it was post-qualification, and they were able to view and purchase the bid documents before submitting their bids, correct? Now, in all 3 cases, they were just, how should I put it? One was just clearly mistaken. He was trying it out. His experience was far below what was required. He wasted his time to submit the bid. Another had, again, his financial, when we did an evaluation of his financial capacity, he was low, but we didn't disqualify any bidder on simply one item. In all of those cases, there were a combination. Each bidder failed to achieve the criteria in one item, plus was deficient in others. Because we could make an exception, perhaps, if there was a small deficiency in one item. But there was a large deficiency in one item for each of those 3, plus minor deficiencies in other items. And I don't understand why 2 of the 3 bidders wasted their money to submit bids.
It means you do not allow the pre-qualification of the contractors before allotting the works. Pre-qualification.
It was done on a post-qualification. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Singh.
In PPM contract, we have clause for clarity and also for reward for contractors. We have discussion not about the clarity, but what about the reward for contractors?
I'm sorry, Saeed,
Can you repeat the question, please?
In PPM contract, we have discussing about that there are the guarantees for the guarantees on the contractor is not expensive. And also there are some reward for the contractor. We are discussing that if there are not expensive, these are the guarantees, but what about the reward?
In this case, there's no reward. there's no bonus. In my home province of British Columbia, the maintenance contracts allow for an annual bonus payment to the contractor up to quite a substantial percentage of the amount. You could get $200,000 or $300,000 each year as a bonus, and that bonus is determined by a panel, an independent panel, comprising of representatives from the cities or the municipalities in the area, by the traffic police, and by some civic groups like a hospital or an ambulance service. And we don't have that provision in PNG. To be honest, maybe stay away from that first time around. It would be something to of this influence. So we're staying away from it.
What about retail?
I don't know yet.
I think so.
We'll discuss that.
First, the top, but second largest, first, because we have line constraint.
Hello? On the basis of the reference index, you have maker sections, section 1 and section 1.1 and 1.2. And you propose initial reports and done routine maintenance for the period of 1 to 12 months. So after having reconstruction and overlay of a specific portion of the road, so whether you propose that we are blocking money for the routine maintenance from 13 to 44 months. So in Pakistan, in scenarios like developing countries, you don't have much money to allocate that much funds for routine maintenance from after having reconstruction or overlay. So what you will propose that? What you comment about it? Either it's an applicable to all, it's specific to this case, or it's applicable for all the countries or all the cases we can apply it.
Okay, hold on. In the first 12 months, or the first 6 months, he's going to bring the entire length of road, except section 1, up to the service level. So he's going to have, if you will, a road in acceptable condition. In the first 12 months, he's going to bring that first section up to a similar level through reconstruction. So he's being paid separately to repair the road before he maintains the road. So he has to base his maintenance price on that knowledge that his maintenance price is going to cover routine maintenance activities, minor crack sealing, minor edge repairs, etc., to a pavement that he has been already paid to bring up to a good standard. Does that help?
Last question, Mr. Jamal.
Sir,
Yes, please.
safeguard plans. Thirdly, safeguard plans. Hello? Safeguard plans takes considerable time to implement. Please comment on that, especially the ADB projects. And second, the front-loaded projects. Comment on that, is it positive and it's good and it's bad? Front-loaded projects. 2 questions. Thank you.
The safeguards plans are a challenge to the contractor.
Safeguard plans, during implementation, it takes considerable time. Please comment on these safeguard plans. First,
Okay, well, let's do it in 2 steps, or 3. First of all, in the bid document, there's a specification for what is required in each safeguard plan. Those specifications are either national specs in Papua New Guinea, or they've been given to us by the World Bank, saying, look, this is what has to be in, for example, an HIV/AIDS plan. So those specs are put in the document. Second step is the contractor is given, once the contract is signed, he is given 1 month to prepare each plan, which is then submitted to the employer for approval and payment of the plan. Just the plan, not the implementation. He then has to implement each plan, say traffic management, over the period of the contract, 44 months. The cost to implement